Welcome teachers, this is another Mona and Tracy video production, and this time we're going to be talking about word analysis, and we know it's just another layer of DRA2 that gives us a little bit more diagnostic information to help our students and help us with instruction. So I had sent an email with attachments. The first attachment was the helper handbook for DRA word analysis, and the other part of the attachment was a little word analysis recording guideline sheet. I printed mine off in green so I wouldn't lose it, but yours was in white when you printed it off, but it was a little guideline for when we do actual scoring for the test, so you should have those things. If you haven't printed them off, please hit pause and go ahead and print those so that you're ready for the training. Okay, let's continue. Okay. Take your helper handbook and go ahead and before we look in it, I want to make sure you know all the parts to the test. We have the word analysis teacher guide. This gives us all of the tasks and the strands. It gives us a glossary, different forms that you need for the actual test. This is our word analysis student assessment book, and this is the actual book you would use with your students to go through the different tasks that you ask them to do. So this is the assessment booklet. There's also the word analysis training CD, and this is something that I know a lot of weekends when you're not busy and you really want to watch great videos, go ahead and check one of these out. So make sure that you know where all of those items are available, and go ahead and open up to page 1 in your helper handbook. Remember that the word analysis is to help our at-risk, struggling, and emerging students, and it's also give teacher further information about where a student is, where you need to take them. Also, as I mentioned, the word analysis is a diagnostic assessment. It has 40 tasks with 5 strands, and the tasks are sequential in order, with becoming more difficult as you go higher up in the tasks. And the assessment is designed for students reading below grade level due to insufficient word analysis skills. It is not for our students that have poor comprehension. It's for students that cannot decode and analyze and figure out how words work. As you see below on page 1, it talks about the 5 strands. There's phonological awareness, meta-language, letter and high-frequency word recognition, phonics, and structural analysis. So those are our 5 main areas, and those are areas where they build upon one another. So if something's missing in a lower strand, that needs to be addressed before they're able to conquer information in the higher strands and conquer the skills in the higher strands. And why we give the word analysis is to determine students' level of control of analyzing words, to document students' progress over time, for grouping students, and to plan for effective instruction. And it really just gives us an understanding of what skills are missing and what we need to address when we work with our struggling readers. Go ahead and turn to page 2 in your little booklet. Some general guidelines. The assessment is not for students who are able to decode but not comprehend, so it's not for poor comprehenders. The assessment is not for students whose reading rate is slow with few miscues, because if they have few miscues, that means they're able to analyze words and have decoding strategies. And word analysis is given after the DRA2 is given. So first the DRA2, and then the word analysis is given. Initial and subsequent testing. The first time you give the word analysis, the initial task is determined by the student's current DRA2 level. The second time, if you give it again, you look at what strands they had difficulty with previously, you address those, and then move on. So we're going to talk about the chart in just a moment, which shows you who should be tested and where you start testing them. There's an example in the booklet as well if you want to refer to that, and that we know we stop testing once a student demonstrates no, little, or some control on any 3 tasks. The tasks do not need to be in order. So for instance, if you give them tasks 1 to 10 and they show no, little, or some control on task 4, 5, and 9, that's when you stop. It does not have to be 4, 5, and 6, or 1, 2, and 3. So you can skip around, and if the moment that they show no, little, or some control in 3 of the tasks, you're done with the test, and then you'll have enough information to know where to build your instruction from. There are suggested mini lessons starting on page 172 in the booklet. Say if your student has difficulty with rhyming words, there are exact little lessons that you can look at and lean on, or gives you an idea of what kind of instruction that student might need to help them be able to master certain tasks. So starting on page 172, there are mini lessons. There's also a glossary in the back of the book that helps you with specific vocabulary and verbiage that's brought up throughout the testing, throughout the material. So great glossary in the back, which has great information just in general as a reading teacher as well. Okay, there are 4 steps to administering the word analysis. The first is determine which students should be tested. So turn to page 3, and you'll see at the top it says who should be tested, and the second little diagram shows you where to start testing. So you just find your grade level, you figure out which part of the year you're giving the test, and it tells you exactly, well, if I have a first grade student that took the test in the fall and they were level 2 or below, that tells me word analysis will probably give me some great information so I know how to instruct them or where to begin. Then it also tells you exactly which strands and which tasks to start on in the range to work with them on which strands and tasks. So refer to the guidelines to determine who and where to begin testing. The second part of the word analysis is to actually administer the test. Make sure you have a stopwatch. Make sure that you only read the parts in the text that are in bold face. Those are the parts that the teacher is actually saying to the student. You can see the bold is where the teacher speaks, and the non-bold is general information for you to help them through the testing. So only read the bold italics. And then remember the 3-second wait rule for letter and word recognition, and there's an 8-second wait rule for words or for sentences that must be generated by the student. So some of the tasks ask for you to ask the student to give you a sentence or an idea on something. They get 8 seconds for that, or if it's just a letter or word they need to recognize, it's 3-second wait time. So keep those general rules kind of in your head for testing so that we do not skew information. We're all doing it the same way. Recording guidelines. That's the little other attachment that I'd asked you to print off. Again, I printed mine in green so I wouldn't lose it. I'd have it handy. Keep this next to you during testing so that you can refer to how to mark your guidelines. For example, it says for correct responses, place a check mark, and that is on the actual part of the test that you will print off and have ready for the different tasks. Just an example, it tells you that if it's a correct response, you'll put a check mark in the correct box. If it's an incorrect response, write the incorrect response given by the student. That will help you with diagnosing exactly where they are struggling or not attending to. For self-correct, place an SC next to the place that they self-corrected. So if we're all kind of using the same kind of marking system, it will help with consistency and also give you an idea of what it should look like when you're finished and how to kind of analyze it. So make sure you use your little guideline to help you with the actual recording on the tasks. And on page 111 in the teacher handbook, it shows you exactly an overview of what the recorded responses should look like, but I've just condensed that onto your little bookmark so you don't have to keep referring back to it. Okay, let's go ahead and turn to page 4. And the next part that you need to look at is a scoring guideline. So once you're finished with the task, you score it, and then it gives you an idea of where the student fell on that test. The next part, which is step 3, is analyze students' behavior and responses, and you do that on the student cumulative record. And that is the record, and it's on page 24, that gives you all the main information about what your student did, and that's in comparison to the DRA2 continuum. On the continuum was the final sheet where we marked everything to figure out where they fell. Well, the student cumulative record for the word analysis is also available, so you can take all that they did with the tasks and compile it on 3 sheets. The first sheet gives you a general overview about the student. The second 2 sheets breaks down all the different tasks and where they fell. So this is kind of like their ending report that you fill out after the tasks are completed. So keep that in mind, and again, it compares to our DRA2 continuum. It's kind of like all the information put on 2 or 3 sheets. Another layer of the word analysis is the spelling and oral miscue analysis, and this is when it just gives you additional insight into their writing, their spelling, and their reading, and how it all kind of connects together, the encoding and the decoding. It starts on page 160, and it talks about looking at conventionally spelled words and approximations. The difference between those, when you're talking about a student's conventional spelling, it's words they spell correctly in their independent writing. When you're talking about spelling approximations, those are words students spell incorrectly in their independent writing. And you'll do an analysis of that. So what this means, this isn't a test where you'd walk up and give them 10 words or say some words and they write them. You're taking from their own personal writing or writing they're doing in class, you're looking at the miscues and you're filling it out. So you'd have to have previous data to be able to fill out on these sheets. So it's not just a list of words that they spell. It's looking at their actual authentic writing and pulling information together per that writing. So again, the spelling and oral miscue analysis is just another layer to word analysis to give you more insight where the student is, where they need to go, and maybe their main areas of where they're struggling and where to build from. Page 5, our last page. Things to note on the spelling section. Note what word components the student attended to and controlled. Note what word components the student neglected to attend to. And note if there's a pattern. So it's like you're taking all this, what they do well with their spelling and writing, what they struggle with, and doing a comparison to really help you analyze and diagnose where you can be of assistance per your instruction. Final part is step 4, that's identifying a focus for instruction. That is on page 27 in our little teacher guidebook here. And it is also just like DRA 2. There's a focus for instruction sheet with DRA 2, and it just gives the teacher an idea of what can I work with this student per what their data showed me. And it just gives you an idea. If they're struggling with alliteration, it gives you ideas of what to do with them. It's almost like an overview of what you can do for mini lessons with them. So make sure that you look at the focus for instruction sheet, and it'll help you determine the needs of your students and where you can move forward. And again, you can also refer to the mini lessons starting on page 172 in the booklet. Grouping for instruction, you can use, just like with DRA 2, we put all of our information on a class profile and say, oh, I can group these students together, or this would be a good fit. You can do the same with the DRA word analysis group profile form, and that starts on page 166. And so it gives you an idea of, oh, these 3 kids would really work well together, or maybe these 4 kids would fit well in a tier group together. So again, it gives you an overview of and I said it was page 166, to give you an idea of how you can group your students together. So, as for testing, with any test, the more you test, the more proficient you become. Will you give this test perfectly? No. Will you get better at it? Yes. Will it give you diagnostic data to help you with your instruction to move them forward? Absolutely. That's the difference between a quick screening and diagnostic test. You can instantly use information from a diagnostic test to help you with your instruction. Where a screening, you get an overview of what maybe you need to look at more deeply with your students. So, diagnostic tests are where it's at, and this is just another level of DRA 2, which will help you see what you need to do with your students per classroom, tier instruction, whether it's through tutoring. It just gives you additional information. And again, do your best with it, learn from it, and only get better with it. And that's the end. Thanks, group. Bye.